And now, Peter, we're joined by the great man Nigel Farage, the Brexit leader, the GB News host on his way to Australia. Lovely to see you, madam. Sorry, this is the occasion under which we see you.
Yes, very sad. I was here at the gates. The death was announced at 6:30 p.m. London time. I got here about 11 o'clock. People were beginning to gather, trying to desperately find flowers wherever they could to lay tributes. And I got to tell you, there wasn't a dry eye in the place, and I'm not ashamed to admit I'm in that particular number.
Me too.
Yeah. Do you know, so many people have said to me they never thought this would affect them in the way that it has. And the next morning, as I was coming into London, people of all ages saying to me they couldn't get to sleep because something that had been constant, something that had been there forever, had gone. And when you think about the values that she stood for, honesty, decency, Christianity, morality, and of course above all duty and service, part of the reason we feel sad is we ask ourselves a question: are those values dying with her? I passionately hope not, but it's funny, isn't it? It's almost old-fashioned now to talk about the concept of service because everything has to be me, me, me. And some of the recent splits in the royal family perhaps have been around those issues. So, yeah, it really has been the most profound sadness. Even this morning I woke up and it just hit me again.
Do you know what's rare? When we walked again through the flowers and read the tributes, and I got quite teary reading the tributes, for someone with enormous privilege, and has lived a life of difference, you know, it was a different time for the royal family. She was incredibly real and connected with modern Britain. Now, that for a politician is a very rare thing.
Oh, no one can do what she did. I mean, she appealed, above all, she appealed to working class Britain, patriotic Britain, and that meant right and left of the political spectrum. This was the remarkable unifying thing. She brought people together, and of course, once again, she's brought people together, sadly, in grief.
She was the last world leader to have worn uniform in World War II, and I think that the further we get away from people who'd served in World War II, I think that the poorer the society has become. And that again is one of the realisations, as you say, that about what we're saying farewell to, what we're saying goodbye to. And you remember that when she was on the balcony just in July for the 70th.
I was here.
And when the bombers were coming over from World War II, you could see that was the moment of her greatest joy that day.
That was an amazing moment because, I mean, everyone knew that her health had been declining. And there was huge speculation, would she appear on the balcony? And I was pretty near the front. I got here early because I was a huge fan. And yeah, when she appeared on the balcony, I mean, the Mall was absolutely full of people. Everyone went mad. And then, as you say, the flight passed. But in particular, the Hurricane, the Spitfire, the Lancaster, those World War II planes. And that was just such a joy. And yet it was funny, you know. Even at the Platinum Jubilee, unlike the Golden Jubilee, there was also, people were also very emotional on that day because they knew this was the last big occasion.
I would have to say, too, as you know, was here not so long ago, and as the Platinum Jubilee had ended, people feared that they had seen the last of her, and that fear was correct.
This was next.
But she hung on, and I mean, how about this? 48 hours.
It's a lesson, isn't it?
Well, 48 hours before she dies, there she is saying goodbye to Boris Johnson, hello to Liz Truss, inviting her to become the Prime Minister of the country, right to the end. And you could see in the picture that she was frail, but the smile was still there. And I think what you're going to get over the course of the next few days is the intense sadness, I think, will ease. It'll come back, of course, on the day of the funeral. But you'll start to get a lot more personal anecdotes. I was privileged enough, you know, to be in social company with the Queen over a glass of something, and you know, she really had a wicked sense of humour. She was very good and I think we'll hear more of that over the next few days. And for Charles, imagine how tough it is for Charles. You know, you become the king, and yes, of course, people are singing God Save the Queen and the King, sorry, and when the car comes out here, they're cheering, but he knows actually it's that overwhelming sadness that is first in people's minds. And I've been critical, of Charles on your programme, and I've been critical of Charles for years, but I have to say he's made a very good start.
But just on that, these speeches that have come, the speech from Boris Johnson, of course the beautiful, eloquent speech of Prince Charles, and then the Queen's speeches, you know, grief is the price you pay for love. What is it now, the 21st anniversary of September 11? I mean,
on this day.
On this day. And those, you and I both know the work that goes into those speeches of history. I don't think we've seen better words in recent times. In terms of the Queen, she always, with rare exception, got the mood.
Well, I mean, the Christmas message, the 3 p.m. UK time Christmas message, you know, I mean, whatever I was doing on Christmas Day, that was what you had to hear. And she hit the right note. And interestingly, she's been more prominent in our lives over the last few years than she had for the previous few years.
Yes.
During the pandemic, she addressed the nation. She used that famous virulent phrase from World War II, "We'll meet again." So she really, she hit the right note almost every time. But, you know, King's speech, I sat there and I wondered, and Charles it was intensely personal. He just about held it together, and it couldn't have been easy. But actually, he spoke very, very well, and he made one thing very clear, that his charities and the issues, as he put it, that he'd been campaigning for and raising money for and fighting for over the years, that will now be for others. And I think this was the worry. The worry was, if he was to be an activist king, you know, that would alienate half the country. He's made it absolutely clear that he won't. And he said to a friend of his a few years ago when he was asked this question, he said, "What do you think I am, a complete idiot?" So let's be hopeful. And I have to say, I think he's carried himself magnificently.
Well, and you could see as well in that ceremony yesterday at St James about the proclamation that he was very sure-footed. It was actually William who looked a little.
Well, it's a long apprenticeship.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, he knows where all the tools are now. Also, in terms of the British people and part of the fascination and mixed emotions of these days. We literally, Peter and I were talking to the photographer who was in St James Palace taking the photos of the proclamation with the assumption that would be the front page. And then 4 very well-known people decided to go for a walk out the front of Windsor Castle, and that became global, every front page in the world. Were you sitting there watching who's holding hands, what order they're standing in? Tell us about the
Body language.
Yeah. I mean, clearly Meghan didn't get the rapturous reception from the crowd she might have expected. Look, it's a good thing, isn't it? And I think, perhaps, don't we know ourselves in our own families where there are always disputes? What family hasn't had disputes and fallouts? But it's at a moment like a parent's funeral or whatever it is that we start to come together. Listen, I think it was a very good thing indeed. Very good thing indeed, because, you know, in the King's speech, he didn't even refer to them as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex.
He
said Harry and Meghan with their life overseas, and it was almost as if Charles was saying, "Well, you've gone." And I wonder whether those words from Charles made them rethink their attitude towards things.
It's interesting, in that speech there was 4 long sentences devoted to Prince William and Kate, now the Prince and Princess of Wales. Charles was not there when his mother ascended the throne in the room with the Privy Council, but of course William was.
Yes.
Looking very much on at his own destiny that will come. The term Princess of Wales was also pretty loaded with history. They will really now step up. I mean, Charles is, 73? So there's a big role for them now.
Yes, I mean, Charles, and of course the Queen Consort, who we're not talking about very much, but perhaps we should be.
Well, we'll come back to her,
Okay,
but give us your sense of the Wales.
Look, I quite frankly, I think William and Catherine, as we now have to refer to her.
Catherine.
Apparently, now that she's Princess Catherine, we've got to call her. Look, they are just magnificent. I mean, she's a class act. She is a class act in every way. Whether she goes to a school with little kids or visits an old people's home, she never, ever puts a foot wrong. She looks the part. William is diligent, never gets himself into any trouble. Yeah, they are going to be, they're going to be a very much more public understudy of Charles than he was to his mother, apart from perhaps the last year. So, and I expect we'll have a coronation probably next June or July.
That's the question we're going to ask you about, the timing of that.
Well, you see, the thing is, I mean, King George VI died very suddenly. He was 56 years old. This was post-war Britain. Rationing was, it's hard to believe, but rationing was still in. So the coronation took a lot of planning. My mum slept in the park just over there, and it rained just to get a glimpse. But clearly, you know, just as this funeral, Operation London Bridge, has been planned for years and years and years, it should not be difficult by, say, next July to have the coronation.
Well, also, I mean, unlike previous times, the capacity to get from the furthest parts of the world, like, say, little old Australia, to here, you can now do within a day.
Yes.
That's something that couldn't have happened in previous times. So whether that speeds the process up. But also, I was thinking about, when you were talking about the 70th anniversary and the beloved nature of how British people obviously think about the Queen. I'm just thinking that 25 years ago, when the flowers were for Diana, not for Her Majesty,
yes,
that was this inflection point. But from that moment in time, the way they handle things, the way they embody things, the ability to pick the most perfect popular culture person to be associated with, so say London Olympics, great moment of pride for the country, there's James Bond. 70th anniversary on the throne, there's Paddington Bear, and it echoes back in the tributes that they draw pictures of James Bond, or they draw pictures of Paddington Bear. That was an instinctive genius.
Yes, you see, the other European royal families have all gone.
Yep.
They've all gone because they looked remote, completely out of touch. The absolute skill of the House of Windsor and the absolute skill of Elizabeth, and I think Philip, her late husband, had a lot to do with this because he was a very sharp man, is they managed to maintain all the trappings, all of the pageantry, all of the history, all of the colour, whilst at the same time being up with modern events and modern times. And I think it's extraordinary, isn't it? The James Bond stunt at the Olympics. She didn't even tell her family.
Yeah, that's great.
Which we love.
And Harry yelled out, "Go Granny," didn't he, at the time? I think it was awesome.
Let's go back to Camilla.
Yes.
You and I touched on that.
Yes.
I was of the Diana generation, but I was privileged to meet Camilla in and around a heads of government meeting in Sri Lanka. I found her captivating.
Oh, yeah.
Disarming and
yeah.
genuine. And I can see why she has won his heart. And I think a lot of Brits' heart, am I right?
Well, she won his heart in 1973. I mean, that's the truth of it. But of course, she was a Catholic, and at the time, Charles marrying a Catholic was considered to be very difficult, if not impossible. She went off and married somebody else. She was the devil. You know, Diana was beloved, died in tragic circumstances. Camilla was the devil. The clever thing that Camilla's done is she's worked hard. They've been married now 17 years. She's worked hard. She's never, ever said anything. She's just kept quiet. She didn't try and fight her way out. She's got her way out of that mess just through dutiful hard work. It's perfectly clear that Prince Charles relies on King Charles. See, I'm still doing it.
We're all doing
still
it.
Doing
Don't
it.
worry.
I reckon he still does.
Yeah.
I reckon there's a chance he might still do it.
He relies on her. I've got friends of mine that have worked with her in charities. They say she's hard-working, terrific fun, and she will throw herself into this absolutely with heart and soul.
And does she eventually, we were talking about this last night, Peter, does she eventually will just be called the Queen, or will we continually say Queen Consort? In 5 years' time, what will we be called?
I think colloquially she'll just become known as the Queen,
Right.
but not quite in the way that this Queen was, because this Queen was the Queen, and this is the extraordinary thing, all over the world. I mean, to think that in America, and we had a slight fallout with the Americans over one of our monarchs a couple of years back.
Bit of tea that's wet.
Well, you know, but to think that even in America, on all government buildings, all military bases, the flags are at half-mast until sunset on the day of a funeral.
And the beautiful tribute from Emmanuel Macron. And I don't often give him credit,
Well,
but it was very eloquent.
It's not often the French are nice about us, but for once they were. Look, I mean, let's face it, she was the most famous person in the world. And as head of the Commonwealth, she was the most loved person in the world. And there may be one or two sniping in the New York Times and elsewhere, but let's not worry about them. Actually, this is an incredible global event, and the funeral, it's just going to be extraordinary.
Nigel Farage, thank you very much. We look forward to talking to you throughout the week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.